In this video, I'm going to go over sample interview questions and how to answer them effectively and efficiently. Once you get through this, the interview is going to be a piece of cake. None of their questions will surprise you, and you'll have a solid response for all of them. Hey everyone, Danny here with OJIS, helping you to challenge status quo and find your dream job. Alright, this information that I'm going to share with you is super important. There's a lot of information in this video, so let's get excited about it because this is the information that's going to allow you to nail that interview. And that is what you want, right? Now that I have gone over the types of interview questions that you can expect to counter in the previous video, let's go over examples of these interview questions and how to answer them. So let's get right into it. Go to the section Other Content and open the document labeled Interview Questions. As you can see, this document is broken down into 4 sections: generic behavioral, generic story, specific behavioral/story, and questions to ask them. Before we proceed, let's define generic and specific questions. Generic questions cover skills and experiences that aren't specific to the job posting that you applied for. On the other hand, specific questions are the exact opposite, involving questions that relate to desired skills and experiences mentioned directly in the job posting. That is why they're specific, because they are specific to the job posting that you are applying for. Therefore, specific interview questions can and will often change with each job posting. So let's go over some generic behavioral interview questions. Some examples of these are: describe your greatest accomplishment, describe your greatest mistake, describe your most challenging problem, describe a situation when you took a leadership role, describe a situation when you disagreed with a team member, describe a situation when you had to mediate between 2 conflicting members or groups, describe a situation when you incorporated many teams in a decision process, describe a situation when you used your persuasion skills to successfully convince someone, describe a situation when you delegated a project effectively, describe a situation when you used your blank skills, describe a situation when you used your analytical skills to solve a problem. As you look through this list, recall that they are questions that will be answered using the STAR method. Also, notice that they refer to situations that could happen in almost any setting, whether it is at the university, at an internship, at a professional job, at a minimum wage job, or even with friends. Keep this in mind when you're writing answers to these questions. Definitely give it your best effort to answer these questions using examples from the university or an internship or a previous job. If you're having trouble finding examples in these settings, then use your college jobs or social environment examples, but definitely keep these to a minimum and only use them as a last resort unless the example really stands out and makes you look good. So I selected this list of generic behavioral questions because these questions can be considered a global set of generic behavioral questions for all other variations of behavioral questions. For example, a fairly common generic behavioral question that I did not list on this sheet is: describe a situation when you went above and beyond what was expected of you. Now, let's see what other question on the sheet would have the same answer. Scan the list of provided questions and you can see that you could use the same answer for describe your greatest accomplishment, or even describe a situation when you took a leadership role. The questions explicitly ask for different things, but you can still approach it with the same answer. When you're describing yourself going above and beyond, you can also sell it as one of your greatest accomplishments, or a situation when you took a leadership role. For any other behavioral question not listed here, you can apply the same tactic. What I want you to realize is that though there are dozens of forms of generic behavioral interview questions out there, your number of possible responses can be limited to much less than that. Give yourself a solid 6 to 8 possible answers that can answer all types of generic behavioral interview questions, both on this list as well as other examples that you can find on the internet. If you do this, you'll be saving lots of time and effort, and you'll still be in good shape for the interview. Next, let's look at generic story interview questions. Tell me about your past job. Tell me about your past internship. Tell me about your past school project or research project. Recall that story interview questions will originate from things listed on your resume, so these questions are directly related to your own educational and professional experiences. The way to prepare for these questions is to simply practice describing all your previous jobs, internships, school projects, and anything else that is listed on your resume, specifically using the STAF method. Find a way to build a story effectively and highlight all the important facts without going on for too long or losing the hiring manager's interest. Now, on to specific behavioral/story interview questions. Good answers to specific interview questions are crucial for a successful interview. And this is because these interview questions are constructed directly from the job posting. So you know the hiring manager is directly looking for these traits or experiences in a candidate. However, you can see that on the handout, these questions are partially left blank, which means that you need to finish the questions that you are going to write answers to. This is because these specific questions are based on the job posting, and you'll have to identify what these specific questions are. The goal is to predict the specific behavioral or story interview questions that the hiring manager may ask you during the interview. So how do you do this? First, recall the keywords, the key phrases, or the required skills or desired expertise that you identified when creating your cover letter or resume for that specific job posting. Second, add these words to the end of the specific interview question phrase provided. That is it. Remember how you embedded the job posting into your resume and cover letter? You have set yourselves up for the hiring manager to ask you these story interview questions since they caught their eye. So definitely be prepared to answer these specific interview questions. Once you finish creating these interview questions, you will realize that the question may become a behavioral question or a story question. Usually, the easiest way to identify this is to categorize what you are adding to the question. If you add a phrase that starts with a verb, then most likely your question will become a behavioral interview question, which will use the STAR method. If you only add a noun to the end of the question, then your question will most likely become a story interview question, which will use the STAF method. So, jumping back to the checklist, the next step is to answer all these interview questions as you would if you were answering them at the interview. Remember to use the STAR method for the behavioral questions and the STAF method for the story questions. I definitely recommend writing the answers down first. Your answers will stick in your head much better, and it will be much easier to revise them and to make them efficient and more effective. Following that, you need to go over your answers out loud. Answer them like you're talking directly with the hiring manager, and go over them out loud 20 or 30 times or 40 times. Don't find an excuse to not do so. It will only help you at the interview. You have the power here to nail that interview, so make it happen. By the time your interview is here, you'll be able to answer all these questions plus any variations of these questions with ease. The hiring manager and anyone who interviews you will definitely be impressed and notice the difference between you and someone else who didn't prepare appropriately. For all these interview questions, one tip that I highly suggest and will definitely help you save time is to recycle your answers for different job postings. This is obvious for the generic questions as they won't change and you will already have a set of answers that will apply to all questions, as discussed earlier. For the specific interview questions, this is a little different, but not much. After a handful of job applications, you're going to start building a small database of specific interview questions and the answers to them. You will start to see repeated keywords and key phrases from different jobs, which in turn will give you similar or the exact same specific interview questions. You will then conveniently be able to recycle those answers. Just make sure to tweak or rephrase them as needed to match exactly what they are asking. Definitely give this a shot. It has helped me and others, and I know it will help you. There is no technical questions section in this document because, as mentioned in the last video, those are beyond the scope of the Dream Job course and will widely depend on your background and the job that you're going after. However, just because there isn't a spot for them in this document doesn't mean you should ignore them. Remember to search online. See what others say about the company. See what they say about the company's interview process and if the company asks technical questions or not. Then, if they do ask technical questions, continue that research to figure out what type of technical questions they do ask. Do your research early, and if technical questions are in the scope of the interview, give yourself plenty of time to review the material. Lastly, be prepared to ask them interview questions. I have included a handful of examples that I think are great questions to ask. What is the best thing about working here? What projects will I work on? Which one of my skill sets do you imagine me applying the most in this job? What would be my biggest challenge if I start working here? What future projects is the company planning on obtaining? Does this company have some sort of program to introduce new employees to the work that is done here? Can you describe the culture of the group or the company? When are you looking to fill this position? When should I be expecting to hear from you? This is your opportunity to clear up any confusions about the job or what you're expected to do on the job. Let them convince you that this is your dream job. Find out if you really like this job and if it will benefit your career. And one question that I strongly recommend asking is, when should I expect to hear from you regarding a decision? It will show that you're eager to find out as well as give you a timeline to follow, in case you have other jobs pending and need to respond to them by a certain deadline. Don't skim through this. Take the time to answer these questions fully and practice them so that you have them ingrained in your head. Know the answers to these questions like the back of your hand so that you can nail that interview. You are setting yourself up to win. I know that many of you are thinking that this sounds like a lot of work, but realize that you've put way more time into other things that aren't even as important as your career, something that you'll be doing for hours on end for years to come. The time that you put in now will pay huge dividends in the future, and this effort is nothing compared to the opportunities that it is going to set your life up for. And the cool thing is that you're going to be on top of the game, taking over your career, your life, your dream.